Chapter 3. Lucian cursed every time his horse hit a bump or hole along the road back to Sanctum, the Dark Society's base. The fight with Levi had surely left him with a couple of broken ribs, a slight concussion, and more cuts and bruises than he cared to count. The bastard hadn't lost his edge even after all those years, he thought. The mountain pass was hard enough to traverse after leaving the crossing, but that wasn't the worst of it. The most agonizing part of the journey was the constant spring rain. Being soaked to the bone and cold amplified Lucian's pains exponentially. What I wouldn't give for a mug of warm ale, he thought. I'll have my fill when I get back. The thought of returning made him pause. He hadn't found the path of man, but he had killed Levi. That had to count for something. If his master didn't like that, then he could find somebody else to do his dirty work. Good luck with that. Lucian was known to be the Society's best man. No matter how big or dirty the job was, he always delivered. His master spent years in training him and always handpicked him for the most special kind of jobs. He knew finding this book wasn't going to be easy. It took me years just to trace it to Levi. If he sends me on another wild goose chase, I'll tell him to piss off. Being the master's dog on a leash was starting to wear thin on him. Lucian knew he could kill the man if he wanted to. Probably. He had only met one other person who could beat him in a fight, and now he was dead. Lucian followed the road until he saw the familiar landmark. He veered off onto a deer trail that cut through the woods. Moss and other foliage hung from the branches that blocked out most of the sunlight. A crow cried out from the canopy above. It didn't take a superstitious man to get an eerie feeling about the place. Lucian looked around cautiously. He always felt like there were watchful eyes waiting in the darkness of the woods. After traveling for a span, he saw the mouth of the cave. 2 guards were posted outside in the rain. "Damn fine day, ain't it, men?" Lucian jeered as he strolled by. One guard looked down at the ground while the other one tended to Lucian's horse. The men held their tongues, knowing better than to test the man in black. Folk still talked about the time that the assassin smarted off to Lucian, testing his manhood. Lucian broke the side of the man's face, and he wasn't even soul-tapped. Lucian made his way down the entrance tunnel, boots splashing the water that ran from the mouth of the cave. Torches hung from the sides of the rock wall, illuminating the path as it descended deeper into the earth. After a few turns, the cave opened up into a large open room. Members of the Dark Society were grouped in clusters. Most seemed to be conversing, while others were busy stacking boxes and crates, preparing for something. The ringing of steel echoed off the rock walls from men sparring. Karn, the giant, stood alone, surrounded by 4 men. He held his sword close to his bare chest, ready to strike. Lucian watched as the amateurs attacked the big man 2 at a time, swinging wildly. He shook his head as they each fell to the ground, leaving the big man to roar in victory. The great room had 4 other tunnels that connected to it. One led to the barracks where the men slept, one to the workshop that held all the supplies needed for the master blacksmiths, fletchers, and armorers, one to the command headquarters which was occupied by Lucian's master, Victor himself, and the last tunnel to a place that even Lucian didn't know. Only Victor was allowed in. A thick steel gate secured into the stone, along with a guard posted at all times, blocked the entrance. Lucian made his way to the command headquarters. "I'm here to see the master." "One moment," the scrawny old man sitting behind a desk said. He left, favoring his right leg as he entered the tunnel. Someone spoke from behind Lucian. "I see you come limping home and empty-handed, Lucian. The master will love that." Lucian turned to see the bare-chested giant smiling at him. He had a shaved head, braided red beard, and stood 2 head lengths over a normal man. Blood lay splattered all over his huge chest and arms from the men he killed while sparring. I told him he should have sent me, Karn said. You should thank him for not sending you, because if he had, you would be dead, Lucian shot back. The big man tensed up. I'm sure he will find a job that suits you, Lucian said. Like scaring women and children with that big ugly face of yours. You must have a death wish, little man, Karn threatened. Lucian stepped up close to the giant. Care to find out? The big man exuded hate and contempt at Lucian. He put his hand on his dagger. The master will see you now, the old man grunted as he feebly sat back at his desk. That's twice he's saved you, Lucian said as he turned around and walked down the tunnel. The master's chamber was lit by hundreds of burning candles. He sat behind a large wooden desk littered with papers and maps. He looked up as Lucian entered the room. The master was an older man. His long black hair had a few streaks of silver sewn in, and his handsome face bore a short cropped goatee. Ah, my apprentice, how are you feeling? Victor said. Like hammered shit. I trust this task was not too difficult for you? Other than fighting one of the Order's best and almost getting myself killed, just another day in the life. And you have the book. After I killed Levi, I searched his shop to no avail. Of course, he didn't tell me where it was either. The master stood and walked to grab a jug of wine from a shelf. He set 2 cups on the desk and began to pour. Fret not, my son. Your failure does not disappoint me, Victor said, handing Lucian a cup. It was, in fact, part of my design. What are you saying? Lucian reluctantly took the cup. Did you know that Levi had a son? Victor said. Levi was on track to locating the Garden of Stones. When you showed up, he gave the book to the boy and told him to find the prophet. How do you know all of this? The oracle has seen it. Then I must go, Lucian said. I can intercept the book before the boy ever meets the prophet. No, Victor said, then took a drink. We will let them do the work for us in locating the garden. I have another task in mind for you. Here we go again, Lucian thought. I need you to go to Kingsport and create chaos. A mass killing in public to drive fear and panic into the hearts of the people should do the trick. You can't be serious. Nothing like that has ever been heard of. It's madness. Victor smiled and walked behind his desk. Pulling a black silk bag from the drawer, he poured the contents into Lucian's hands. These should suffice, Victor said, the light from the stone shining bright in his eyes. If I do this, what about the Order? Lucian asked, incredulous. Not only do they protect the king, they also police the city. Between the king's own guards and the Order, I'll be killed on sight. You will allow yourself to be captured, Victor said casually. It is then that you demand a trial. The king's law cannot deny you that right. So I'm to be hanged. Great. Lucian drained the cup and sat it on the desk. He closed his hand around the stones and turned to leave. Victor touched his arm. No, my son. You have a greater purpose. Oh, and what purpose is that? Lucian asked, exhausted. The master smiled. You're going to kill the king.